In this exercise, we're going to add a few more custom guidelines, and these guides are going to help you and I achieve the same results. After all, we're drawing this together from scratch. I've gone ahead and saved my document so far as trueromance.ai, found inside the 04 line art folder. And you may recall the latest version of the final heart. It goes by the name fussyguides.ai. And after drawing the heart, I figured out that each lobe, that is each half of the heart here, was 224 points wide, as well as half of 224 or 112 points tall. And so we're going to create guides at those positions. So I'm going to switch back to True Romance, and I'm going to twirl open layer 1. And you know what? As long as we're here inside the layers panel, let's go ahead and rename this layer. I'll go ahead and call it Guides. And I'm going to change its color from light blue to gold. And that gives me sort of a lightish orange color. Click OK, and that changes the color of the layer. Now, what does that mean? It means anytime something's selected inside the illustration window, it will have that color associated with it, which is really valuable when you're working in progressively complicated documents inside of Illustrator. It's great to know what object goes with what layer, and you can see it right there in the illustration window. But here's a little bit of a bug. This group should not have a blue line in front of it. It just hasn't gotten updated properly. So I'll twirl close Guides and then twirl it back open, and you will see now that this group has the right color associated with it. Let's twirl it open. This group right here is that object that I drew using the rectangular grid tool. And we can see what's what by meatballing. So if I meatball this guide, I see that he's the outermost guide right there. And then if I meatball this one, I see that that's the horizontal center line. And if I meatball this one, it's the vertical line. So you know what? I'm going to rename these guys a little bit. I'm going to double click on the lowest item, and I'm going to call it perimeter. And then I'm going to double click on this guy right there, and I'm going to call him H for horizontal, just so I know he's a horizontal guide. And then I'll double click on this one and call him V and click OK. Now, what I'd like to do at this point is take this guideline and duplicate it 224 points over to the right. So I might get my black arrow tool. Doesn't matter if I get black or white arrow for this maneuver. Just go ahead and grab it and drag it over. The problem is that my guides are locked. So I'll go up to the View menu. I'll choose Guides, and I'll choose Lock Guides like so in order to unlock those guides. And that's Control-Alt-Semicolon or Command-Option-Semicolon on the Mac. But tell you what, I don't really recommend that you memorize this keyboard shortcut because it doesn't provide immediate visual feedback. And after all, you really need to check whether Lock Guides is the problem or not. And you're only going to see that by taking a look at its check mark. Anyway, it is checked, so I'll turn it off. And now I'll be able to grab this vertical line, but I can't just grab it with the black arrow tool. If I try, then I'll select the entire group. So I will instead meatball V and only V, and then I'll move it over. But because I want to precisely position it, I need to bring up the transform panel. Now this little guy is getting in my face here, so I'm going to go ahead and close it. I can always bring it back up later. I'll click on Transform up here in the Control panel to bring up my Transform subpanel. That's not the only way to get to it, but it's the easiest way. Then I'll change my X value. Now you might wonder, why X, why not Y? Well, if I change the Y value, I'm going to move the line up and down, which would serve no purpose whatsoever. That would just mess up the registration. Instead, I want to move it either to the right or to the left, and that's X for you. So when you have a vertical guideline selected, the X value is what matters. When you have a horizontal guide selected, you care about the Y value. All right, I want to move this line 224 points over to the right. After the PT right there, I'll enter plus 224. So I'm going to do some math, and a positive change will move the line over to the right. A negative change would move it to the left. Now, if I were to press the Enter key or the Return key on a Mac, I would move this line. That's not what I want to do. I want to duplicate it. And to duplicate things in Illustrator, you press the Alt key on the PC or the Option key on the Mac. So I'll press Alt-Enter here on the PC or Option-Return on the Mac in order to duplicate that line. And we have another V guideline. All right, let's click on the first one again to make it active, the center line there. And then I'll go up to Transform once again. Click after that X value and enter negative 224, so minus 224, and then press Alt-Enter or Option-Return on the Mac to create a guideline 224 points the other direction. All right, so that's enough vertical guidelines. Now we need to add 3 more horizontals. I'm going to meatball the H item right there. Go up to the Transform panel, change the Y value this time. Notice I'm changing the Y value, though, to 60. I'm not adding or subtracting, and I'll press Alt-Enter or Option-Return on the Mac to create a new guideline 60 points below the top of the artboard. Now I'll go up to transform once again. I'll click after 60 points and I'll enter plus 112. Now, why am I entering plus 112? Well, that's going to move this horizontal guideline downward 112 pixels. So plus moves the guide down, minus moves it up. And of course, 112 is half of 224. That's the height of the lobe there of the heart. And so I'll press Alt-Enter or Option-Return on the Mac in order to create a guideline at that position. And then finally, I'm going to go back to Transform, and I'm going to change the Y value once again to 474. Again, I just measured the bottom of the heart this time. And I'll press Alt-Enter or Option-Return on the Mac to create a new guideline at this position. And we now have created all the guidelines that we need. The only thing I might do at this point, if I just wanted to make sure I understand which guide is which, is I'll sort of click around here because now I have so many different guides to choose from. I'll meatball this first H line, and that happens to be my original center line. And I'm going to go ahead and rename it by double-clicking on the H center. So I know that's my original center line. And then I'll go up to the bottom V right there. I bet that's my original vertical center. It is. And I'll double click on V and I'll change it to V center like so. And then I'll click OK. And now I think I've got everything set up pretty much the way I need it. I'll go ahead and twirl close group. And I'm going to add one more layer. On top of guides here, I'm going to add a new layer by clicking on Create New Layer, that little page icon at the bottom of the Layers panel. And that goes ahead and makes the new layer called Layer 2. But I'll tell you what, I want to name that layer as I make it. So I'm going to press Control-Z, Command-Z on the Mac to undo that layer. And instead of clicking on this new layer button, I'm going to Alt-click on it or Option-click on a Mac. So we're seeing a couple of different purposes for Alt or Option clicking. One is to clone objects. The other is to change the behavior of a dialog box. If a dialog box automatically comes up, Alt or Option clicking is going to make it go away. If it doesn't come up by default, Alt or Option clicking is going to force its display, and you'll see so many examples of this throughout this series. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and call this layer Drawing, and I'm going to change its color back to light blue, which is a great default color for a layer. And then I'll click OK, and we now have a new drawing layer, and we're done. Now you can go ahead and update your document if you want to, and join me as I demonstrate how to draw a Valentine in the next exercise.